if I take you back to 2014. So at the time, I was head of HR for a tech business, and I got asked to speak in London, first ever public speaking opportunity. So travelled all that way down to London with my colleague Matt at the time. And it was just really at that start of where we were talking about gender diversity and working for a new sort of tech scale up in Manchester. It became apparent around the lack of women within technology. So all my talk was focusing around what do we need to do as an industry and specifically to our organisation. So we went down to London, and I remember sitting in the audience, crammed in the middle. So there was no way I could get out. And I was second on. So I sat there with a glass of water, trying to think, right, I can't drink too much because I'm going to need a wee, but my mouth was so dry, I'm going to need a drink. And then the lady who opened the sort of conference, it was HR conference, was the ex-HR director at the BBC. And wow, okay, she was the most uber confident woman that I could possibly follow, strutting up and down in terms of the stage, no notes, no nothing, and just beamed confidence. If I probably was at the back or at the side, I probably would have done a runner. I was feeling those sort of thoughts around, well, how am I going to follow that? You know, no one's going to find my sort of talk valuable. Who's going to want to listen to me? But it was that time when I couldn't back out. So I stood on that stage, and thank God there was a lectern on it, because I gripped it for dear life. I mean, I had imprints in terms of in my hands around holding on so tightly. And I read every single word on my script, and I don't think I actually looked up. But I did it, and I looked up, and people clapped at the end of it. I even got asked questions. And it was back then when sort of Twitter was a thing around, and they had a live feed, and actually people were commenting around what I was talking about. And that was sort of like that pivotal moment when I actually realised that someone found value in my voice, somebody found what I was doing was interesting. You don't automatically go onto a stage or start talking confidently. There's a journey behind that. And then I think back in 2018, when I was like 4 years into my speaking journey, I wanted to pay that forward. And since 2018, I've taught hundreds and hundreds of women through finding their voice, through confidence. The only way I thought I could show that to every single woman out there is to create this documentary. We share the warts and all, the challenges, everything that these women will go through, and share that to basically be relatable that it's okay, that is normal. That is absolutely normal to feel like that. You will go through that journey, but you can do it. And I think that's the whole purpose of what the documentary is all about. We're going to follow a group of women who have openly said they have never spoken publicly before or have a massive fear of basically speaking in public, and taking them on a journey. So where they've applied, where they've never met each other, bringing them together for 2 very practical workshops, not only to learn tools, resources, elements around confidence, but also to form a community of support with each other. And we're going to sort of follow that journey where they're going to be recording video diaries at home. So when they're feeling and reflecting on the things that they've learned, things that they put on practice, the moments of self-doubt, the moments of elation in terms of those breakthroughs, to capture what actually happens when you push yourself out of your comfort zone into something that you fear so much, but something in you wants you to do it. And then at the end of it, we're going to put an event on together where they can get to share their voices with friends, family and colleagues to show other women that it actually is possible, and we need more women to take that step to do so.
I am so excited and so grateful to be a part of this documentary. As a young early career woman in tech, the ethos behind this documentary resonate with me so much. Focusing on things like representation and finding your voice is something that I understand because I've experienced firsthand what a difference it makes to see someone who looks like you occupy the spaces that you hope to occupy.
I often see these people up on stage and they're sharing their stories. They are super confident, very well articulated, very polished. And I will often think to myself that I couldn't do that, that I'm not confident enough for it. I don't pronounce my words very well. I make up phrases. I am super unfiltered. And that is a limiting belief that I've placed upon myself. So I applied for this program to prove to myself that that is that I can do this and I will do this.
I've been working as a female in IT for 30 years now, but I still struggle, I think, to gain a wider audience and feel like what I'm saying is valuable, and that I'm not filled with trepidation.
I think I underestimated how nerve-wracking doing video diary was going to be. I guess my subconscious is a little bit worried about how I'll come across. But then that's kind of why I'm doing this. Because I need to get over this fear of being myself in public and showing myself in public.
It was really interesting process. I think it was 54 applications that had, just by putting it out on social and groups, etc. And then I chose 10 individuals, and the 10 individuals that I chosen was where you could really see in terms of the effort that they put into the application form. They talked about what impact it would have on them in terms of from a confidence perspective, from a career perspective.
Women in tech is a cause that I deeply care about, and having myself experience some of the challenges that women face at the workplace. And I wanted to do something good to feel good about myself, and if that means making my voice heard and being that support to other women, wouldn't that be just amazing?
My journey throughout tech has been one that's been filled with so much self-doubt and barriers, but through every experience I have learned resilience. I would like to share this because if it inspires or helps anyone feel less alone, then I do believe that it's worth it.
Now I've been asked to record how I feel being selected into this programme, and in all honesty, it fills me with absolute fear. However, I think getting that sense of self-accomplishment from putting myself forward for this and conquering my biggest fear of public speaking will be such a great achievement.
Maybe this documentary video diary thing being part of the journey is a stroke of genius from Becky, whether she thought it through or whether this is completely accidental, because it feels a little bit like I'm practicing public speaking right now, but without an audience.
Learning to overcome that fear in a safe environment and hopefully share my story with the wider community to help other people with similar, because it cannot just be me that gets this inner every time I get asked to do it. So let's follow my journey.
And yeah, let's go.
When I chose the 10 people, and then probably people are asking, well, there's only 7 women in the documentary. Then I had people pull out for various reasons. I don't know this for a fact, But women have a tendency to self-sabotage. So it's almost like you can apply for something, not put much effort in, you don't get chosen, you go, oh, well, I knew I wouldn't get chosen because I'm not good enough. So it's almost they set out to self-sabotage that process right at the beginning. And I think that's what makes this documentary so, so important, because we need to get across to women who may be feeling like that, and I don't know in terms of all those applications, that the only way that you're going to get support is if you open yourself up to it. And that's a huge barrier. That is, like I would say, one of the biggest barriers that I see. Women who point blank say, I'll never do that. You will never make me do that, or I can't do that. And so fixed mindset around that challenge that they're not even open to explore what the possibility is. And I just hope by people seeing this documentary that actually it could change mindsets for women that may be fixed in that respect. Even when I talk now, the highs and lows of the anxiousness, the nervousness, going, what am I going to say? What will people think of me? And I think it's really important to show other women out there that that's normal, and you can go through that journey and then still stand on stage and share your own story, because everybody's got something to share. Seeing it with children especially, that all they want to do is fit in.
Way too many young people feel that they lack confidence. 15-year-old girls feel far less confident in speaking than their male peers. But it's not just the confidence, it's also their self-perception of skills and that sense that their voice matters.
They lose the voices, they lose the sort of who they actually are and speaking up authentically. Why do we have this sort of need to sort of fit in and, not share our own voice?